Tall Tale TV.
Of Monsters and Mushrooms by Lesley Herron. Chapter 28, Sporasis.
You're not really gonna make me go out there by myself, are you? Vel kicked over another brick, grumbling at the general disarray of what used to be his home. He shook his head, looking back up. For the last time, no, I am not going anywhere. He forced his new hand deep into the pile of rubble and fished out a twisted line of cords and wires. Eric tucked his hands back into his pockets. I mean, it's not like there's much left of your home to return to. He looked around pointedly. They were standing both inside and outside the structure, shifting around the remains of what was once a north-facing wall. I've had more than enough adventures for one lifetime, thank you. I just want to fix my house and return to my peace and quiet. Vel gave another grumbled sigh and tossed the broken line into a pile of other frayed and tangled cords. He reached down, shifting another pile of bricks to pull out a battered tool chest. Those things are still out there, and it's kind of your responsibility. Not mine, not ours. Vel dropped the hunk of crumpled metal into a separate pile. My hands will be too busy fixing this place up. So, if you want to venture out into the unknown, tracking down God knows what that escaped through those portals, then by all means, please do so.
He returned to his task of digging out the remainder of his belongings from the piles of rubble. Eric looked down, searching his mind for any way to convince Vel to join him. He saw a corner of a battered picture frame sticking out of the mass of concrete and brick. He fished it up, swiping his finger across the unbroken pane of glass. The occupants of the picture, younger versions of himself and his brother, with their mother, smiled happily back up at him. He flipped the frame over, pulling the picture from its home.
You mind if I keep this, then? Since you won't come with me. Vel ignored Eric's words. He knew that guilt game all too well. If he answered, in any direction, it would open up an argument he couldn't win. And then he would be coerced into joining Eric on another reckless escapade through the multiverse. He looked around for something, anything, to change the subject. He didn't have to look very far, as a massive boom rocked the area, and another section of his home collapsed in a heap of wooden beams, brick, and twisted metal. It's okay, Attila coughed, climbing out from the massive rubble pile. I didn't get hurt. Vel reflexively clenched his new mechanical hand, smashing the brick he was holding into dust. That throb in his temple was back. What the hell was that? Eric asked as he stumbled over the brick rubble toward the direction of the explosion. He could see that seething rage on his brother's face was quickly reaching a boiling point. A miniature mech suit, roughly as tall as a man, clanked into view. The mini-fridge cockpit popped open, and Evan poked his head out, shooting Attila a scowl. This idiot put the missile launcher right next to the handbrake. Hey, it's important to learn the layout of a machine before you operate it. That's your fault. Attila dusted off his hat and flipped it back onto his head. Anyways, I was just finishing the last touches on Trashbot 2000 before we headed back to 3-Hub. Eric could see the vein in his brother's forehead bulging and stepped in between the two. Wait, 2000? Why not 2.0 or 4001? Attila laughed, waving Eric off as if he were stupid. It's 2000 because he's half the size. The grin he was wearing was wide enough to put a crocodile to shame. Oh, that was bad, Eric groaned as he pushed his glasses back up the bridge of his nose. So you're not sticking around? I thought you and Madam Whisper were like dating or something. Eric gave a little shiver at the thought. Attila shrugged. What can I say? There's just too many ladies that would be denied my company if I settled down with just one. He nodded sagely. I'm like a philanthropist. What he means? Brigg came around the corner, lugging several large duffel bags. Is that he got tired of losing at chess? He set the bags down and ran the back of his hand over his forehead, wiping away the sweat. Attila waved his hands dismissively. Whatever. We got our medals. He thrust out his chest, showing off the small, shining coat of arms bearing a blue enameled skull with a crown. Time to take our loot and head home. Besides, Madam Whisper said I could visit her anytime. And that you guys are welcome too, since, you guys helped. Vel grit his teeth. Helped? Between a total system shutdown and reboot, being crushed beneath one of Attila's failed experiments, having his arm ripped off, and subsequently almost dying, he'd had little time to fully explore the depths of his utter loathing and hatred for the scrawny merc. But at that comment, the breadth of that hatred became crystal clear to him. Helped? Well, in her eyes, or eye sockets, yeah. Attila shrugged, buffing his medal with the back of his sleeve for the 100th time. But she did want me to tell you that she expresses her utter gratitude for helping to open up her trade routes again, and the remaining worms were so scattered and defenseless that they were easily dispatched. She's even thinking of expanding on the city because of it. You do know she's a tyrant, right? Eric, Vel, and Evan said together. And that we helped open up her drug routes? Evan folded his arms over his chest, still sitting in the tiny mech suit. Potato tyrant. I got a shiny medal. Attila pointed at it again, just in case they hadn't seen it the first time. Brigg used a massive hand to shove Attila's hat over his face before looking at Eric. So did I hear you correctly? You're going back out there? Why? Eric turned his gaze toward the sprawling mushroom forest. Some of Alpha's minions escaped into the realms. Any one of them could become another mad deity bent on world destruction. Someone's got to stop them. Evan looked up, his tiny blue eyes lighting up with a glimmer of hope. You're going back out in the woods unknown? On another adventure? Eric nodded. Yeah. You want to come with? A gravelly voice cut him off before Evan could reply. Oh, well that's just great. The shriveled form of Sadie stepped out from behind Vel. She smiled up at him, thunking his shin with her knobbly cane. She gave the cyborg an overacted wink and moved towards the merc in the tiny mech suit. You go off adventuring and leave your poor old granny all alone. Nobody to take care of me. That's gratitude for you. Evan slumped, causing Trashpot 2000 to slump in turn. Granny's right. I really should stay here and take care of her. He really wanted to go, but he loved his granny too. And family always comes first. Sadie walked up to the mech suit, reaching up to pat it consolingly on the knee. That's my boy. There's a reason you're my favorite. Evan realized something and leaned out of the cockpit, whispering down to Sadie. You know, Granny, technically, I'm still on the Quack. They never closed their contract. So, if I go with them... You could be charging them hourly for months, Sadie finished, beaming up at him. I raised you right, kid. And don't forget... Evan grinned. Overtime costs extra. Sadie nodded, turning to Eric. All right, he can go with you, but I'm holding you responsible for anything that happens. You get him back in one piece, or else. Eric gulped. Evan grinned and tapped the control panel of the tiny mech suit. I'll be fine, especially now that I have this baby. No way. Sadie's voice returned to a coarse edge. "That's mine. Get out." "But, Granny..." "Out!" "We really should get headed back," Briggs suggested, loud enough to cover up the squabble Evan was now having with his grandmother. "I don't fancy traveling through that mushroom forest at dark." He scratched at his thick mustache for a moment before adding, "And, thanks for helping him get me. I don't know that he could have made it without your help." He extended his hand out. Eric grabbed that meaty dinner plate hand for the last time. "Thanks for the adventure. And, well, stay safe. I don't know that I could rescue you a second time." Brig laughed and turned to Vel, extending his hand in the same fashion. "Sorry about your old arm, and, well, everything." He nodded towards Attila, and his mustache twitched as he gestured in time to the rubble around them. Vel grabbed Brig's hand with his mechanical one, gripping it firmly. He didn't have any words, mostly because Sadie was lecherously petting his pant leg with her cane, and partly because he wasn't all that upset to see these two go. Well, maybe just a little. He settled for a nod of understanding. "I'm ready to go, big guy. Let's get a move on. I've got street urchins to regale." Attila pulled his breather on over his face. "They're not going to believe you." Brig fit his own mask around his nose and mustache before flinging their duffel bag of rewards over his shoulder. "They never do." "That's why I have this." Attila flourished a pickle-sized container. Brig frowned at it. "What's an empty jar going to prove?" "It's not empty. It's got an invisible in it. It's going to prove my story to everyone in Three Hub." Attila let out a maniacal cackle. Eric watched the two fade away into the thick, fungal tree line at the edge of Vel's property, tucking his hands back into his coat pockets. He bit his lip as he turned to face his brother. "There wasn't actually anything in that jar, right?" Vel shook his head, pushing Sadie away with his boot. "Nah, it was empty." "Oh, thank God. Why didn't you say anything?" Vel laughed. It was a dark and malicious sort of laugh. He returned his attention back to kicking over bricks and rubble. There was a lot of damage, and it would take weeks, but he could rebuild his home. Eric sighed in defeat. "Come on, kid. The other worlds await." Eric pulled out his newly built portal locker, inspecting the output dial and making sure the pins were firing. Evan gave his grandmother a hug, saluted the cyborg, and then fell in line behind the doctor. Vel didn't watch them go. They'd be back, and probably before Sadie could figure out how to get the mech suit down into the underwell. They'd be fine. Probably. He frowned as he watched the shriveled old woman clamber into the machine. She gave him a calculating look, and then hit a button on the control panel. The ground shook with the explosion of another missile colliding with what remained of Vel's home. His jaw dropped as he watched the last standing structures of his house collapse. He took in a deep breath through his nostrils, turning to glare at the old woman. Sadie offered Vel a wink. "You looked like you needed a push in the right direction." As she lumbered away in the machine, he could hear her laughing until she was out of earshot. Vel groaned and tossed away the brick he was holding. Well, crap. Now what? He grumbled angrily as he turned on his boot heel and hurried to catch up to his brother. Eric grinned as he heard heavy footfalls behind them. He turned to Vel as he stepped in line beside him. "You know, I really am gonna miss those two." "Speak for yourself. If I ever see either one of them again, it'll be all too soon." This concludes Of Monsters and Mushrooms by Lesley Herron. What started as a 4-chapter short story quickly grew out of hand, and before she knew it, Lesley had written a 300-page novel. Stay tuned, as there are at least 2 more books in the works following the adventures of Eric, Vel, and Evan. Wow, I can't believe we made it all the way to the end.
What do you mean?
The book. We finished the book. The adventure's over.
Wait, what? We did?
Yeah, why else do you think everybody said goodbye back there?
I don't know. I thought maybe it was like a plot twist or something. I mean, I haven't even got to save a damsel in distress.
Don't worry, buddy. You can save one in the next book.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about sequels.
Actually, you two aren't in the sequel.
What?
Yeah, Vel put it in his contract that he wasn't willing to work with Attila for more than a single book.
But that's not fair.
Yeah, I was only in half of this one. Sorry, boys. Them's the breaks.
Uncool, man. Someone get the writer in here. I need to have a word with her.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
We'll see about this.
You're still here. It's over. Go home. Go.